2019 is done, it's over, it's in the past, and as is tradition, we always like to spend January looking back at our favorite things from the previous year. However, before we get into all the big countdowns of our favorite stuff from video games, there's a lot of video games that will be appearing on those lists that I didn't get to talk about at all. And I can't let that slide. So before we do our big retrospective, I'm going to do a quick review rundown of all the stuff I got to play that I didn't get to talk about. Just packing all my opinions into a cannon and firing them out in one quick blast. Now, I know that's next to impossible for me to do. I know I'm super long-winded. Hell, I once did a half-hour-long review and called it a mini review. I'm so long-winded, this opening is still going on. So how am I going to review over 10 games in this limited amount of time? I have a timer sitting right next to me, and I'm only giving myself 3 minutes per game. Yeah, I'm sure this won't be a total crap show. Let's begin. Going in alphabetical order is Afterparty. This is a game where you play as Milo and Lola, two friends who after graduating from college end up dying and going to hell, and they find that the only way that they can get back up into the world of the living is by beating Satan in a drinking game. This is an amazing idea. There's a great art style to it, and the writing is so incredibly witty. However, the gameplay kind of stinks. Like, part of the challenge is that the more drunk you get, the harder it is to play all these drinking games, but they feel next to impossible to do even when you're sober, even when you haven't had a drink yet. And it almost feels like the game realizes that. It almost feels like the game knows, yeah, you're just here for the characters, you're just here for the story, you're just here for the writing, and yes, all that stuff is great. I love the writing in this game. I absolutely adore Milo and Lola. So what the game decides to do is they basically let you win no matter what. Even if you lose at the drinking games, they still let you continue on in the story. So there are really no stakes, but I'm kind of glad there are no stakes, because that means I would have to keep playing these drinking games over and over again, and that was the least fun part of this drinking game video game. Hell, the only game in here that you absolutely do have to win is the final game against Satan, but they still let you repeat that as many times as you want to. I swear it took me like 24 attempts to finally beat that, because the controls are just so broken. So yeah, it's an incredible game to watch, but not a fun game to play. But at the same time, I still feel like you kind of need to play it so that you can experience what it's like being these characters, because a lot of the decisions that you make alter where the story goes. It actually does depend on how you decide to play the game. So I would definitely recommend picking this up for anybody who wants a really clever and witty game to play, but only if you can get it at a discount. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Next up, Anthem, we had to talk about, and yes, I did finally get a chance to play this game. And I gotta say, I actually think the controls in this game are pretty good. Flying around actually feels really good. If Marvel ever decides to make an Iron Man game that isn't a VR game, whatever studio they choose to make that game, pick up some of the developers from Anthem. They actually made a great Iron Man simulator in here. And I will say I've heard a lot of people complain that the shooting isn't fun. I found the shooting to be alright. I found it to be mildly enjoyable. And the world looks pretty darn cool. I enjoyed flying around and exploring every little nook and cranny of this world. However, the actual quests that you have to go on are really boring. I tried playing some of the online multiplayer stuff, and it was basically just go and shoot this thing so you can maybe get gear that will help you shoot other things, that will help you get gear that will maybe help you shoot other things, and I never got any good gear. In fact, in all honesty, I only really upgraded my gear like once, and that was it. And I went, okay, well, that wasn't fulfilling in any way, shape, or form. I'm not going to be coming back to that, so I'll just continue in the story. And I got like maybe 2 hours into the story, and I went, wow, these characters are kind of changing and going in directions pretty quick. I wonder what's going to happen to them down the road if they're changing that much already at this point in the game. And then I checked the trophy progression, and I noticed I was already halfway through the story. After just a handful of hours, I went, oh, this story doesn't matter at all. They don't even want you to play this story. They just want you to do the online stuff, which isn't fun. And if I had reviewed this game when it came out, I might have given it like a 5 out of 10 because like I said, actually flying around and shooting stuff, yeah, that's kind of fun. But you know, I didn't really have much motivation to keep doing it. But you know what? It's one of them live services games. So maybe they'll come in here and give us some interesting stuff down the road. And as we have seen, no, they didn't. They did not come in here and give us some interesting stuff down the road. So because of that, I'm going to bump the game down to a 4 out of 10. Okay, I'm making pretty good time so far, but this one I might go over on. Astral Chain. Oh my god, I am so mad I did not get to play this game when it came out. And I had the game when it came out. I was just too busy to visit it. And I kept having people in our Twitch chats tell me over and over again, you need to play Astral Chain. When are you going to play Astral Chain? What game are you playing next? Is it Astral Chain? Could you play Astral Chain next? Why aren't you playing Astral Chain now? There eventually came a moment in which I had to tell the chat on Twitch, if anybody recommends Astral Chain again, I'm deleting it from my Switch and I'm not reinstalling it. I'm sick of being told to play Astral Chain again and again. But after playing this, I understand why people want me to play this. This game is amazing, and I know it's from Platinum Games, and those guys are kind of known for creating great combat systems in their games. However, when I looked at the trailers for this, yeah, I was kind of impressed by the design and the style of it all. But when I saw the idea behind the combat, that basically you're summoning out personas or stands or whatever you want to call them, and you fight side by side with these monster creatures that are connected to you by a chain, but you can maneuver them around and do cool stuff with the chains, it reminded me of Wonderful 101, which was an incredibly charming game from Platinum Games, where the idea behind it was you actually draw the things that you want to have all your little allies turn into, and you use the thing that they turn into to fight the enemies. That's a great idea. Didn't really work all that well. That was a game that got by largely on its charm, but it still needed some polish. It did not work the way that they wanted it to, and I thought that's exactly what's going to happen here. This game is not going to work the way they want to. Oh my god, this works exactly the way they want to. When you actually go into combat and you actually have to fight side by side with your monster and you have to maneuver them around to tie up the enemies, and then you go in for crazy combos, and then you do these combos on your own, but then a little light will flash, and if you hit button at the time that light flashes, you do this big super move with your little chimera monster buddy pal in there. I forgot what they're called. Legions! That's what they're called. Legions. Can you tell I didn't write any of this down? Yeah, when you're actually doing all that, it feels amazing. This is my favorite combat in any Platinum game I've ever played. And the design and the style of this world is amazing. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just going to be combat. No, there's so many collectibles and unlockables and side quests. And the side quests are super small, but they're like potato chips. You go in there, you take one, it's over with, but then you kind of want to do another one, and then another one. And there were so many times where it was like, I don't have time to do these side quests. I'm just gonna do like 1 or 2, help boost up my score. And then like 5 side quests later, I still had not even started the main storyline for that chapter yet. This game gave me so much to enjoy. The only thing that I really didn't like about it is that every now and again, the camera can be kind of bad. But that's pretty much it. Also, I didn't really like that we had a voiceless protagonist. I feel like at this point in 2019, we're done with the voiceless protagonist. You can go ahead and give the characters a voice, especially when so many other characters in this game have great personalities. There are so many wonderful characters, even the tiny little characters roaming around the police station who aren't major characters, but just ones that you go and interact with for side quests over and over again. Even they have personality. Oh my gosh, I love this game. It is a 9 out of 10. Next up, Beast Inside. This is an indie horror game that I helped kickstart a couple years ago, and this year I finally got my copy of it, and I was so happy to finally get it in my hands, because when it comes to the horror side of this game, that works beautifully. I freaked out constantly playing this game. I think some of the best reactions I've ever had while playing a game on Twitch all came from this game. Get out of the basement. Oh, good. You know shit's gonna be different on the way back.
Whatever happened, I hope it's not my father's blood.
Ah! My father never could express emotions, but when he felt unhappy, he used to clutch this little angel in his hands. Oh, that would have been a great place to have a secret on the bottom. Ah, f*** you! there was like a kerosene lantern there, like they put it there so I would go over to it. So if the game was just the horror elements, I would have been all on board. I would have been 100% behind this game. Problem is, they put in there a whole lot of other things to do that aren't really horror related. This feels like a game that had no idea what it wanted to be. You play as two different characters, one in the present, one in the past. In the past, it's almost entirely horror, but in the present, it's mostly you trying to solve a mystery. So there's things like having to investigate a scene and figure out what happened there. But the way you investigate is that you just happen to find a ghost tracking device that the CIA left you, and you just already know what it is and you know how to use it. Yeah, it's as weird as what I just described. And basically, that just becomes a lot of looking around until you find the thing that you have to point your thing at, and then you point your thing at, and then that's it. That's the game. There you go. That's what you do in the present. Or there's a code breaking system in here where you have to take little bits of information and it goes, okay, well, this means that, and then that means this, and then this means this over here. So that means that thing A is now thing D, but thing D was actually thing X the whole time, but X isn't a real thing, so you have to go back to thing Q. It's that weird. It's that complicated at times. And I played through one of those missions, and I didn't know it was optional. And when I finished that, I looked at the trophy progression, or the achievement progression, I should say, on Steam, and like only 5% of people actually completed that. Meanwhile, for the very next thing that comes after it, like 60% of people had completed it. So in other words, like only 1 out of 12 people, I think my math is off on that, but like only 1 out of 12 people who actually played this game looked at this thing and went, yeah, this is totally worth continuing. I should absolutely get through this entire weird little code breaking system. It's that frustrating. So this is half of a really good game, half of a really frustrating game, but the scares are so good, I'm still gonna bump it up to a 6 out of 10. Next up, another horror game, Blair Witch, and I will go ahead and warn you guys, I am going to give you my score on this, I am going to give you my opinions on, but I did not finish this game. However, I will let you know why I did not finish this game. I played this game back in October, so that way we could do a review on it, and I played for multiple hours. I got deep into this thing. I got almost up to that point where you enter into the big creepy house. However, I was having some problems with my recording software on that day, and I could not make the Blair Witch full screen on my computer, so I tinkered with it some. And then I was actually finally able to do it. I was able to get it into full screen. Great, wonderful, hooray, good for me. I played through many hours. I got through the majority of this game all in one scene. I was really enjoying it. But then when I decided to stop for the day and take a break, I closed that full screen to discover that behind that full screen was another window that was open on the menu of the game. And all the recording footage I had was just of that menu. I had somehow opened 2 different windows for this thing, and I had recorded the one that I wasn't playing on. So all that footage was absolutely gone. It was completely wasted. There was no point to it at all. But even worse, that was my main game. So when I tried to continue playing this thing, it said, oh, you haven't actually done anything in this. Like if you look at my Steam info, it will tell you, yeah, you put several hours into this game. But if you actually start playing this game and you hit continue, it starts you off right there at the entrance to the woods. So I looked at this thing and I went, you know what? It's enjoyable. It's good. It's spooky. There's a lot of unique mechanics in here. I kind of like the system of having to use your dog to find clues. And I kind of enjoy using the camcorder to look into the past, and that alters the future and the present. That's a really unique way to solve puzzles in here. I really enjoy all that stuff. And also, exploring the woods is great. It feels creepy. It feels like there could be something around every single corner. And I constantly felt like I was lost in the woods. And I constantly wanted to complain about how I didn't know where I was supposed to go. But even when I felt lost and like I didn't know where I needed to be, I always wound up where I needed to be. And I think that had a lot to do with your buddy, with your dog, Bullet. Bullet is constantly leading you where you need to go, no matter what. Even when you feel lost, as long as you follow Bullet, he's gonna get you where you need to go. I think that is a wonderful way of working in a compass that is part of the actual story. And yeah, when you're in the woods, you should feel like you're lost. So they were able to capture that feeling while still making it so that you don't get lost in the game. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this game, but it was not good enough for me to go back and play through again. So I did look up on YouTube what happens in the rest of the game. I know where the story goes from here. So I feel confident in giving this a 7 out of 10, but if you want to come in here and say, well, I don't feel like you can fully judge this without completing the game yourself, hey, go ahead, but as I said, it's not quite good enough to play through twice. Next, Borderlands 3. The best thing that I can say about this game is that I actually liked it, despite the fact that every single news story about this game made me really want to not like it. I mean, we all know all the crazy stuff Randy Pitchford is doing in 2K games and all the other little controversies going around surrounding this entire studio, but hey man, I gotta admit, this is a fun looter shooter. It is incredibly enjoyable just going around and exploring this world and finding one secret piece of awesome gear after another, and the characters are so good in this game. Except for that one new young character who is the sidekick to the old character. Yeah, everyone hates that character, and for pretty good reason. That was the one character that was like, okay, you're trying way too hard. But all the other characters in here, I really enjoyed. The twins who are the big villains, they're some of my favorite villains in any video game I played this year. I feel like they're that exact right level of goofy, extreme villain that a Borderlands game should have. I know a lot of people found the jokes in here to be really cringy, and yes, there are some in here. I mean, early on in this game, when you meet that guy who's the head of the bandits, and he's just running around in his underwear the entire time going, woo, bandit life. I was like, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this, but yeah, after that, it really picked up. I really started to enjoy all the other random characters that I found in here. I think the upgrade system is amazing. It's one of those systems where every new ability I got, I could actually feel how much it improved the gameplay. However, the thing that kind of pulled me back, the thing that always kept me from getting too into this game, from enjoying it too much, was just simply the fact that so many of these missions are just go out there, shoot a bunch of guys. Go out there, shoot a bunch of guys. Go out there, shoot a bunch of guys while you try and escort someone. And yes, I know it's a shooter looter. I know that the idea is you shoot and then you loot. But I feel like they could have been more creative with it. I feel like they could still have kept that spirit in there, but given us a wider variety of playstyles in here. And I honestly, the reason why I didn't review this thing when it came out was just simply because I got really bored with it after a while and I had to stop and then come back to it. And then I was like, oh, okay, good. I needed that break in there. Now I can play some more. And then I kind of got tired of facing the same things over and over and over again. And then I had to stop and take another break. So yeah, it's enjoyable, but it's not really creative enough to keep me invested to play the entire thing from start to finish. So I'm gonna go with a 7.5. Okay, next up, Control. This is a game that when it got nominated for so many awards at the Game Awards, I heard a ton of backlash against it. I heard so many people going, it doesn't deserve to be up there. They should take that out and put it in a different game. Why is that game up there with the rest of them? So maybe it's just me, maybe it's that the wave of negativity ended up tapping down my expectations, maybe it's that this is just my particular niche thing, but I love Control. This thing has one of the best styles of any game I have seen all year. The way that they create this big office building that looks like a drab office building, but still feels like there's something not quite right here. And every time you go through a door and you enter into a new area, it feels almost like you just cross into a different dimension. And there's so many secrets in here and so many notes that they end up just typing out. Clearly understanding that no one would have the time to read all this, but they wanted to do it to help build this world. I respect the hell out of that thing. And every new mystery that came up, man, I was engaged in this. And again, I was talking about Borderlands having a really good upgrade tree. Control has a great upgrade tree. There's so many ways that you can customize the way that you do battle in this game, or what you decide to put points into, or what stats you decide to buff, and that can alter the way you play this game in numerous ways. I saw somebody playing this game where they almost entirely relied on the gun, and I kept watching them do that going, why on earth are you doing that? Use your telekinesis, man! I did that for almost everything in this game, and I just steamrolled past all these opponents. Unless I ended up getting hit once. Yeah, that is one of my few complaints about the actual control, the actual way that plays, is that your main character in here, yeah, she becomes a powerhouse, but she's kind of a glass cannon. I would knock down wave after wave of enemies, but then if I got hit twice, I would be in the red, and there's no real way for you to heal yourself back up aside from actually beating the opponents and collecting the health that they end up dropping, which is nice. It does force you to get back into combat, but when just 2 hits make me almost die, I really wish that there had been like some health packs or some other ways to heal myself back up. It feels like that's a bit extreme for me. Also, the enemies in here, there are some great side bosses, but all the main storyline bosses kind of suck. They're all basically just regular enemies that you're going to meet later on in the game being introduced for the first time. There's nothing really that unique or special about them. And when you consider how crazy this world is that they created and all the different places that they could go with it, yeah, it kind of feels like a waste that in the main storyline, there really isn't anything interesting for you to face aside from just people that will eventually become normal enemies later on. However, I really love the characters in here. I really love the weird, creepy atmosphere this creates. I love that this game has its own unique logic that you can only hope to try and figure out because it's so incredibly mysterious, but it's supposed to be mysterious. That's the entire point of all of this. And there's amazing side quests in this thing. That is something that I love in any video game. If you can give me some really good side quests, then you instantly get points from me. And I enjoyed some of the side quests more than I enjoyed the actual main storyline. I mean, heck, I enjoyed that stuff so much, I actually platinumed this game. I didn't have time for that. There were other games I had to get to, but I liked this one so much I had to keep playing it until I had done everything. And because of that, yeah, I kind of have to give this a 9 out of 10. Next up, Duskgover. I will give everyone a second out there to say, what the hell is Duskgover? Yeah, I always enjoy looking for some weird games out there that might be a diamond in the rough. And this year, I heard people describe Duskgover as being like a Persona beat-em-up game. And I said, I'm sold at Persona. You don't have to say anything else. And I played this game, and it's got so much potential to it. You play as this girl who you end up getting sucked into this other dimension where there are monsters that are trying to break into our world, but then the gods that protect this city, they fuse with you and they end up giving you their powers, and you can then summon out them to help you in combat. And then during the day, you have to go and work at this convenience store that is run by the god that oversees this entire town, and you have to make friends with all the other deities that you end up merging alongside with, and the more stuff you do for them, the higher up your rank gets with them, and that ends up improving other stats in there. Yeah, I enjoy every part of what I just said. The only problem is this game is cheap. Like, really, really cheap. I like the design, I like the art style, I like the concept behind a lot of the stuff that they're doing in this game, and it doesn't feel like anything in here isn't good simply because of incompetence. It just feels like, yeah man, we do not have the money to do what we actually wanted to do in this game. I feel like if they had doubled their budget, I would be giving this a much higher score. You can tell they want this world to be bigger, to feel even more alive, to have even more characters in here, to have more interesting upgrade systems in here. This is a really basic mid-tier game. But it's a mid-tier game that's got a lot of heart, a lot of personality behind it. It's one of those things that back in the day, if I had gone to my local game store and I found something in the discount bin that would get me through the weekend, something that I had never heard of, but I was like, yeah, it's for $5, I'll go ahead and I'll check this thing out, I would probably end up really enjoying it. It'd be one of those games I'd still be talking about to this day. So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10, and I feel like I'm being really nice on that one because yeah, it doesn't play as well as it should, and there isn't as much to do in here as there should be, and sometimes it doesn't look all that great, but it's got such good ideas in here, and so much charm, and there was still so much that I liked about it. However, the game's also like $40, and yeah, it's not worth that. Wait until this thing goes like super on sale. Wait until there's like a 75% off Steam sale on this thing before you decide to check it out. Next up, Indivisible. This is another one of those indie Kickstarter games that had been in development forever. And it was one of those that everybody was starting to wonder, is this thing actually going to come out? And then this year, it actually finally came out. And I have to say, it's not a disappointment. This thing was worth the time and effort that they put into this thing. I know one of the reasons why it took so long to get made was because they surpassed their goal so much, they had to keep adding stuff into this game. They had to keep adding new characters in here. That was absolutely worth the time, because the magical thing about Indivisible is that you're going on this grand epic quest all across these different lands in order to stop this goddess Kala from returning and destroying the entire world. And with every single world that you go to, you meet multiple new allies, and some of them are story related, and a lot of them are optional side quest characters that you can completely miss. And as somebody who grew up absolutely loving Chrono Cross because of how many characters were in that game and how many of them you had to actually explore to find they weren't all story related, man, this gave me all the flashbacks of that I enjoyed. I heard a lot of people out there who used to play Suikoden saying this reminds them of Suikoden. I never played that franchise, but I know it was beloved by people, so I'm glad to see that the Suikoden fans out there finally have a game like that for themselves. And this is also a Metroidvania game. It's a game in which you get to go back and forth across these worlds with every new ability that you unlock, and it allows you to go to different lands, and I really wanted to keep exploring all these different lands. Problem is, the secret to a Metroidvania game, and I will return to this in just a second, but the secret to a Metroidvania game is that you have to be able to teleport around from one map to the next with a fair amount of ease. You don't want to go from one map to another and then you start the entrance, and then if there's a secret at the very end of this gigantic map, you have to go back across the entire gigantic map. No, you need to set up multiple different teleportation spots where you can just warp back and forth. This game doesn't do that. There's a secret tunnel that goes between every single one of the locations, so okay, that's one way to enter. And then you can hop on a boat and enter at the docks of every single location. And that's it. There are only 2 ways to enter every single one of these maps, and every single one of them requires you running all over the map to get to the point where you can even enter another map. And it became so much work, and it was a giant pain in the butt after a period of time. I still ended up recruiting every single crew member. Heck, I even platinumed this thing. This is another one that I platinumed this year because it was so much fun and I enjoyed these characters so much, but it was a pain having to go back and forth across these maps. Also, you unlock a lot of abilities that are designed to give you different ways to traverse over different terrains. And it feels like a lot of those are there just so that you can, get from one point to another, like uncover a new area that was part of a map that you couldn't cross before, so that way you can go and find a new character or a new side quest or something like that. But at the end of this game, it is a gauntlet of every single different type of terrain that you could come across, and you have to keep crossing that over and over and over again, and it keeps getting more and more complex. And don't get me wrong, that's great. It's good that they challenge you like that, but there's nothing challenging like that up until that point. So it feels like this game is like, yeah, it's an RPG where you go around and you explore and you meet all these new different people, and it's got some Metroidvania elements in it. Oh, at the end, it's Super Meat Boy. Yeah, at the end, you're going to die over and over and over again. It feels like they could have warned us about that a little bit, like got us a little bit more warmed up to go into that. But even with those few complaints, this has a gorgeous art style, a great story, and amazing characters. This has the best ensemble cast of any game I played this year. I loved seeing all the interactions between these characters, so that still gets it up to an 8 out of 10. Now, speaking of fun Metroidvania games, that my big complaint is the Metroidvania element of it, Jedi Fallen Order. This is the game that actually gave me faith in the Star Wars video games again. It has what is maybe my favorite story of any video game this year. This is one of those stories where I was engaged. Every single character I was locked onto, like, okay, what's your story? What do I learn about you? Every single character, I want to know the deep, dark, extended universe backstory to every single one of them. I think this has an amazing collection of characters. And when I first heard that the story was going to be, okay, we're having to find all the Force-sensitive kids out there so we can restart the Jedi Order, I thought, okay, that's kind of a basic story to have in here. But you know what? Sometimes you can take a basic dish and you can spice that thing up to make it a 5-star course, and that's what they do in here. I've heard a lot of people out here say that this story is nothing special, but I think that at the core it's nothing special, but they turned it into something special. This to me is a Star Wars game. This is a game that makes me go, I want to know more about all this. I want more stuff like this. However, while I absolutely love the characters and I absolutely love this story, my complaints with the game kind of come from the actual gameplay. Because there's one thing in this gameplay that I think is, pretty good, but could have been better, and there's one thing in this gameplay that I think is actually pretty bad. The thing that I think could have been better was the actual, gameplay of it. The combat is good. I like the combat. I know it's supposed to be very much like Dark Souls, and it was very much like Dark Souls. Except I think that the Dark Souls and Bloodborne combat and Sekiro combat that this is trying to borrow from is a little bit better than the combat in here. And traversing around this world, it's great. I love jumping around all the different ledges and climbing against the walls and swinging on ropes. It kind of reminded me of Uncharted. But Uncharted was a little bit better. So that's kind of my problem with the actual gameplay. I can look at this and go, wow, you're borrowing from a lot of sources and you're doing it well. Everything you're doing in here is good. But everything that you remind me of is a little bit better than what you're doing. Except again, for the Metroidvania element. I love that you unlock new abilities, and with those new abilities, you can go back and explore, and there's so many different things that you can level up. There's so many different collectibles that you can find. That's great. That's stuff that I love in a Metroidvania game. The problem is, there's no teleport system in here, so you will go to a huge map with so many different things to do on that map. But if you return that map, sure, you can create shortcuts for yourself, but those shortcuts will only cut down on your time by so much. And there were many things that I wanted to go back and explore. There were many things that after I unlocked the ability to go and traverse those terrains, I wanted to go back and see what was beyond that wall that I had faced earlier. But I never did it because just thinking about how much I would have to go and explore and how far I would have to travel before I could even get to that wall that I had ran into earlier, it just made me not want to do any of that even when I was enjoying traversing these worlds. So yeah, if they had just put in here some kind of a way of teleporting between different places in these different planets that you went to, that would be great. I would boost my score up by an entire point if they did that. But they didn't, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I just realized we are in the 8 out of 10 gauntlet right now because, not to go ahead and spoil my thoughts on this next game, but Luigi's Mansion. I was a big fan of the original Luigi's Mansion on GameCube. I've been waiting for that game to get yet another sequel, one that kind of matched the stuff that I loved from the first game a little bit more. And yeah, this one is everything that I loved from that first game, but more of it. They took everything that I enjoyed from that first game and bumped it up another notch. I think the hotel that you're walking around has a wonderful design to it that fits the Luigi's Mansion formula perfectly. I enjoyed that you get all these different gadgets in the game, and you just get them. At the beginning, you don't have to unlock the plunger thing, you don't have to unlock Luigi. You get pretty much every ability right there at the beginning of the game, and every single thing that you can do in this game, you can do with these different abilities. And there's so many creative levels that challenge each and everything that you can do in this game. You can basically suck, you can blow, you can shoot out a plunger, you can create Luigi. That's pretty much all you can do. And this game came up with so many different ways to use those abilities. I really do have to come in here and applaud the creativity of the game developers here, because when you think about it, they only had a couple of ingredients to work with, and yet they made an entire banquet out of it. However, and this is going to be a weird complaint to have right after I said that, I kind of feel like they made too much in this game. Because every single floor that you go to in this hotel, it feels perfectly paced at the beginning. And then after a while, every single floor seems to get longer, and there's more to do on there. And there eventually came a point where I was enjoying all the little puzzles I had to solve, but eventually I just said, oh my god, guys, I'm done with this level. Please, I want to go on to the next level now. But there's still so many more things that I have to do. This game actually exhausted me at times with how much I had to do on every single level. But one of the things that helped me get through that exhaustion was the charm of this game. This is hands down the most charming video game I played in all of 2019. All of Luigi's little interactions with the other characters in here, all the little tiny bits of dialogue that they gave them, even the small subtle things, like whenever you finish a puzzle on level, Luigi will give this little hooray motion. But if you're playing as Luigi and Luigi is just there unconscious in the corner, Luigi will give the hooray motion, but then you'll see Luigi's unconscious body lift a thumbs up in the direction of Luigi. I was like, that's such a small thing, and they don't stop to point it out, but I love when video games put small, charming things into their games that they don't even bother to point out. It's there for you, the audience, to find, and there's so many things like that. And of course, speaking of the most charming thing about this game, the bosses. If you had told me some of my favorite boss fights of any game of the entire year would come from Luigi's Mansion 3, I wouldn't have believed you, but sure enough, that's exactly what happened. There's like 14, 15, 16 different boss fights in this game. I think only maybe like 2 or 3 of them aren't all that good. The rest of them are great. And speaking as someone who really enjoys a good boss fight, that got some extra points for me. You know what? I joked about how I was going to give all the remaining games an 8 out of 10. Just talking about this game right now, it makes me realize, no, I'm giving this an 8.5. And the last game that I'm going to talk about today, Outer Worlds. Now, if you saw our Fallout 76 review, you know that I said I never actually got to play a Fallout game. And after playing Fallout 76, that still remains true. I had been waiting to see what you guys have been talking about in the Fallout community, and now with Outer Worlds, I'm like, oh my god, I get it. Going around from one planet to another, I mean, all these colorful characters, and just doing so much simply with the dialogue. Just figuring out the best interactions to have with these characters. I'm not even talking about the combat in here. I'm not even going to talk about all the different monsters that you can destroy or all the different upgrade systems in here, although that stuff is actually pretty good in here as well. The thing that won me over the most was just the dialogue. It is one of the wittiest games I played all year. It's a game that had me laughing constantly all throughout it. You get to recruit so many different members to your crew, and I love every single member that gets recruited to your crew. This is another one of those games this year, like Control, where I didn't have time to do all the side quests. I had to get to other video games. But I stopped, and I sacrificed those other video games so I could do as many side quests in this game as I possibly could. I love interacting with every single character in this game. They're all so incredibly witty and insanely well written. However, that kind of brings me to one of my complaints with the game, which is that I love the side quests. The side quests are great. But there came a moment while I was doing the side quests that I realized I have completely forgotten what the main quest is because I don't really care. When it finally got back around to that point where I was reminded of, oh yeah, you're trying to unfreeze all these people so that way you can fight the board. Oh, right, that. Cool. I'm gonna keep doing the side quests. And that's really the only reason why, even though I love so much about this game, I can't give it too much of a higher score, simply because, yeah, the side quests are great, but I didn't really care about that main storyline. And also, when I'm thinking about some of the other games that I love this year, they all had those big moments that made me drop my jaw. Nothing like that really happens in this game. It's all consistently good. It is all consistently a very well-made game, but it never did anything that blew me away. It never really reached past that 8 out of 10 score, but it never dropped below the 8 out of 10 score. It was just consistently always at that 8 out of 10 with everything that it did. The only thing that really, to me, I can point at in this game and go, yeah, that actually, you know what, if there's anything that would bump the score up, it would be this, and it is that I really did appreciate that this game gave you a lot of ways to customize the way that you play, including doing something that I have always wanted to see a video game do, where they can let you just talk your way out of a situation. I put all my points into the dialogue related options, and I beat the final boss of this game without having to fight them. I just tricked them. And what I love is that I went in there and I didn't have my stats high enough the first time that I fought the boss, so I did have to face off with their giant robot monster, and I died, and then I went, hold on a second. I've got members in my crew who can bump up these specific stats. I've got these costumes that can bump up these specific stats. Let me go, change everything around, walk all the way back to that boss, and then I now have the stats to choose the correct options. And yeah, I didn't even have to fight him. I love that. I've always wanted to see a video game do that, and it was so rewarding in this game. That's like the one thing in this game that I can say, yeah, it actually kind of goes above an 8 out of 10. Also, I have to give this game praise because this is a big open world game with so many characters in here, and there are no glitches. I didn't even see this thing stop to buffer in this game. I heard people saying, yeah, this thing runs great. There's no problems with it at all. I thought, oh, so what you mean is there are a few problems, but you can overlook them, right? No, there's no problems. Oh, you mean in comparison to, like, you know, some of the other big AAA games out there, there's no problems by those standards. But of course there's going to be problems, because there's always problems. How can there not be problems in a big open world game? Oh my God, guys, there's no problems. It runs smoothly. Like, after playing this game, I look over at Bethesda and I'm just like, okay, now you really have no excuses. What the hell is going on over there? This is like when Street Fighter has a netcode that is so bad that it makes the characters teleport all over the place and freeze and crash matches constantly. And then some crappy little indie fighting game has perfect netcode because they go, yeah, it's obvious. We've all figured it out. We know how to fix this. Why are the big guys not doing it? I just had to come in here and just give that some praise real quick. We went way over 3 minutes on this one, but yeah, 8 out of 10. So there you go, that's it. Those are all the games that I got to play enough of that I feel confident in giving a score to. There's so many other games that I did get to play, but I didn't get to finish them, or I didn't get far enough into them that I feel like I can come in here and give my score. Like Disco Elysium, I am loving Disco Elysium. That game, it is as great as everyone says, but it's long, and I am not anywhere close to finishing that thing. Gears 5, one of my very first Gears games. I have not played a Gears game in forever. This one, it makes me go, oh yeah, here's all the stuff that I like about Gears games, and here's all the stuff that I don't like about Gears games. But I know it's supposed to get even better as the story goes along, but I just didn't have time to continue it. Code Vein, absolutely loving the bosses in there. Everything else is kind of stupid, but yeah, that game is giving me some of the crazy Soulsborne action that I have been craving. But it is another long game, and there's no way I'm going to get through it in time to do a full review on it. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all these games in the comments down below. And like I said, coming up within the next week, we are going to start doing all of our big 2019 retrospective countdowns. So make sure that you click that subscribe button and ring that bell. Very important that you ring the bell. That's apparently what the actual subscribe button is. So make sure that you do all that stuff and come back later. Thanks, everyone.